Good afternoon. There's a tendency on the Hill when members come is to say we'll be brief and pithy. And I might hold to that because we are in the midst of a number of issues that probably grab hold of this Hill, maybe more so than the American people, but there are principled fights. And so you will see on the floor of the House today the question of Benghazi and someone ringing me about the Rules Committee. Benghazi, that's my phone. That's my phone. Whether we should have a select committee on Planned Parenthood and whether or not we should look at the Dodd-Frank bill, which many of you know was to restore some dignity and order to consumers, whether that should be reconfigured. So Parm, I want to thank you for allowing me this moment of a breath of fresh air and how delighted I am to be with the ICIT and this great panel, all the panels that have come. Let me, in her absence, thank my good friend, Congresswoman Judy Chu, and you can tell that I have good partners. Many members are scattered around. Let me thank Devin as well, and my staff, Lily Coney, because I think in all of that, this may be the most significant rule that is being ruled, meaning that you're ruling this room, and it's the most significant meeting, I believe, on the Hill today. For it talks about not yesterday's and not tomorrow's. It talks about today going into the 21st century. Cybersecurity has been a long-standing issue for me. When I chaired the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, cybersecurity was under that jurisdiction. And I remember distinctly visiting places like water processing plants, and people would look and say, she's on Homeland Security, what is she watching the way we do our water processing? Because I knew that every aspect of our life is going to be in the cybersphere, from the grids that deal with your electricity, and we know that there's been any moments of many blackouts and other issues. Now we've seen the enormity of the hacking epidemic, the breaching epidemic. We announced or discussed during that time that 85% of the nation's cyber was in the hands of the private sector. And in a sense, we gave a warning and we attempted a collaboration. But I think America had not gravitated to the enormity of what we were grappling with. And so there were no distinct programs where someone would say, I want to go into cybersecurity. I know that there is some of them beginning because I know that my chief of staff has a son that just entered university, and he's talking about cyber. How amazing. And so what we're doing to here is of great importance to me, and my remarks will be brief because of the quandary in which I find myself being called to the floor and the Rules Committee at the same time. I think what I will do is call the other Sheila and let her go on to it, and I'll be right behind her. You didn't know that, did you? We members have 2 and 3 and 4, and you'll see us walking down the hallways. But because October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I think it is extremely important to focus on this question of minority participation and the impact of this vast industry, good and bad, on minorities. And so as this is sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security, this National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is designed to engage and educate public and private sector partners through events and initiatives with the goal of raising awareness about cybersecurity and increasing the resiliency of the nation in the event of a cyber incident. I cannot thank the ICIT for the broadness of your agenda, for you to pause just for a moment to begin to talk about the involvement of minorities. Thank you. In 2013, President Obama's leadership through the issuance of the Presidential Policy Directive 21 moved to increase the security resilience of critical infrastructure in the United States. Some years after, we in Homeland Security, having been on Homeland Security since the tragic and heinous day of 9/11, had begun talking about it. But we were grateful that during his tenure, the President raised this question of the security of the infrastructure. There were three strategic imperatives that drove the federal approach to strengthen critical infrastructure security and resilience: refine and clarify functional relationships across the federal government in advance, to advance the national unity effort, enable effective information exchange by identifying baseline data and systems requirements for the federal government, and implementing an integration and analysis function. All these are well and good. And over the years in the 114th Congress, for example, I introduced a number of cybersecurity bills: H.R. 60, the Cyber Defense and National Guard Act, which requires the Director of National Intelligence to report to Congress regarding the feasibility of establishing a Cyber Defense National Guard. I'd ask you to look at that and support it. My cybersecurity bill would seek information on the number of persons who would be needed to defend the critical infrastructure and a number of other aspects. I introduced H.R. 85, terrorism prevention and critical infrastructure protection, national security, economic stability, public health, to assess these things ahead of time. Finally, I introduced the H.R. 53, Cybersecurity Education Federal Workforce Enhancement, which would amend the Homeland Security Act to establish within the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Cybersecurity Education and Awareness Branch the goals of recruiting, information assurance, cybersecurity, and computer security professionals, providing grants, training programs, and other support of the kindergarten through 12th grade, secondary and post-secondary computer security education programs. We've got to get on the stick. Supporting a guest lecturer program in which professional computer security experts lecture computer science students at institutions of higher education. Identifying youth training programs for students to work in part-time on summer positions of federal agencies. Developing programs to support underrepresented minorities in computer security fields with programs at minority-serving institutions, historically black colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and rural colleges and universities. My friends, the world is getting past the generation needed to do this work. Oh, we have been talking about STEM for a long time. I got a list of amendments here that I will not carry forth, talking about successful amendments that I had on the American Competes Reauthorization Act, addressing STEM education gap, and a number of amendments, again, about the question of K through 12. Before I left Houston, I was speaking to a businessman who was offering some of his very experienced personnel that deals with defense issues, high security issues, that he would be willing to come into our schools and in a non-classified manner teach this thing called coding, which is an amazing concept that even when the advertisement of General Electric, I hope you saw that, where they were speaking the language that one bespectacled person was going to do coding at GE. And someone else was saying, "What are you doing?" "I'm going to do something with some kind of computer game." We have not educated our children as to what the next level is going to be. So I am very grateful for this important meeting today. Thank you for allowing me to participate in such. And I think I will conclude with these numbers, which you already know. By 2018, the United States will need 710,000 computing workers, 160,000 engineers, 70,000 physical scientists, 40,000 life science workers, and 20,000 mathematics workers. As I indicated to you, this may be the most significant rule, as we have a rules committee, and meeting on the Hill today. I'm grateful for your presence here. And I think what our commitment should be is, as we sit in this room with the varying levels of expertise, that we be part of propelling action or help to build on the work you're doing, or to work with some of the legislative initiatives that we have to be able to push forward an additional pathway for helping to prepare us not for the 21st century, but just as NASA is now doing in many of the science centers and NASA centers across America. Many Americans don't know the extensive work that they're doing in preparing to go to Mars, something that people would smile at some years ago. The work is quiet, the work is deliberative, but they're preparing to go to Mars. Are we preparing to take the vast array of diverse Americans into the 22nd century, preparing to be part of that generation that is going to Mars and having the same mindset of excellence and defined technology and understanding right here on the earth that is given to us? Let's see how we can accept the challenge. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States of America.